Coming up on the Running Restaurants podcast, we talk about steps you can take today if your leadership team needs some help. My duo of guests are Darren Denington of Service with Style and Alison Anne of Restaurant Revolution. These are the two behind the popular workshop series at the California, Florida, and New York restaurant shows entitled Restaurant Management 201 and Restaurant Management 301. So they bring a bunch of insights learned from their presentations around the country with operators of all shapes and all sizes. So just lots of good stuff here. Stay tuned. All right, welcome to the runningrestaurants.com podcast, where we're bringing the tips, tools, and techniques you need to make your restaurant more profitable and more successful. I'm your host, Jaime Oikle, and I'm excited for today's episode because joining me back is Darren Denington and Alison Anne from the Restaurant Management Workshop Series. Now in its third, I can't believe it, or fourth year, I think, depending on you guys can let me know. The series has been a big hit at industry trade shows around the country in California, New York, as well as Florida, which is great. I love that you guys are doing this, and I love that folks are just keep going. So today we are going to talk about steps you can take if your leadership team needs some help. So we're going to focus on that content, and we're going to talk about the workshops as well. So before we get going, I want to give you guys a chance to say hi, a 30, 60-second intro. Alison, why don't you start?
Hey, Jaime, thank you so much for having us back. We are also excited to be here. I'm Alison Anne. I'm the founder of Restaurant Revolution, which is a company born out of my over 20 years, just working my way up through the ranks of front of house in the restaurant industry. I'm also a professional certified coach. So really just getting a handle on what is causing burnout, what's causing turnover in our industry, especially post-COVID, and how can we support our leadership teams in order to support our staff so they can show up and be more productive and effective in the workplace.
Awesome. Great. Darren?
Hey, Jaime. Thanks for having us. Darren Denington from Service with Style, and excited to talk today about helping leaders and owners of restaurants when they've got some problems with their leadership team, when you don't have that core piece in place. So I'm excited to talk about that. Service with Style has been around 28, 29 years now. Secret shopping is how we genuinely help restaurants get better and better at service and training, and yeah, just trying to help restaurants in a few different ways to continue improving.
Awesome. Yeah, for folks that are maybe hearing us for the first time, or I mean, I've interviewed Darren many times over the years, Alison as well. And in both cases, these guys have lots of experience. So they're going to bring a lot of insights to you. So stay tuned, take some notes. It's going to be a good session. Darren, let's kind of start with you when we're talking about leadership teams that may be having some troubles. Where do you start? Is it with an org chart? Is it just identifying who's who? Like, what do you think?
Well, it's an assessment of where your leadership team, your management team is today. And Alison and I both firmly believe that if you're going to do anything special in this industry, you have to have a core group of people that is on the same page and you're working it together. And if that piece isn't in place, then what we find is the daily issues and the daily struggle take over your day. And we need the leadership team in place to be able to work on the things that can just continue to help us get better and better and better. So my first step, if you're antsy about where your leadership team is today, grab a Diet Coke and a hamburger, sit at table 7 for a quiet lunch by yourself with a blank pad of paper and scratch out an organization chart just to see what positions you currently have, who's in those. You want to make sure that the titles are consistent. And when the owner, the general manager understands that, okay, we're running with the kitchen manager, or is it an executive chef, or maybe it's a shift lead. And when you have different titles and different positions, it causes confusion amongst the entire team. And that's where the clarity has to start. So my first step is to scratch out an organization chart, see what positions we have, see where we're strong, see where we now need to start recruiting. But yeah, start with an organization chart and some quiet time to yourself. Take a look.
Good. All right. So they've done that. They've written some stuff down, got an idea where people are. And I think it's good feedback because you might see a glaring hole in your structure and realize what you got to do. So, all right. So now you're talking about what do they do? Like, how do you get them on the same page? What are some of those next steps?
Yeah, it's defining the team and adding that clarity, which means first the org chart, and then you have to start to fill the positions, right? Who do you have? And you're trying to set up some basic systems for your leadership team so that you know how to run things as a small group. Let's just say it's 5 people on your leadership team. They have to understand where you're going. They have to understand basic tools that you're going to use to do this right. Well, when do you meet? Let's get a responsibilities list in there. Let's make sure everybody understands their position. Let's understand how we talk to each other and how we solve problems. So the 5 people come together and really hash out how they're going to run the restaurant. So it's a regroup, and let's make sure that we as the 5 people understand our policies and understand that the kitchen manager, Mike, he's going to take care of the inventory. And Jane, as the general manager, handles the profit and loss statement. And you divide and conquer the responsibilities while you're clarifying to each of these leaders what their roles and responsibilities are.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to kind of hit you back on is this communication piece. We live in, where is it? Of course, it's nearby, right? We live in this world where this is here, right? What have you seen restaurants do most successfully? Because obviously in person is the best thing, but sometimes you need to do short messaging and so forth. Text stuff, app stuff. What are restaurants doing now? It's an effective way to kind of all stay on the same page.
Alison, I'll let you take this one. This is kind of your specialty.
Oh, sure. Okay. So I'd say that the most important element, because you're right, like there are 8 million options. Every time we're at the shows, there's 4 new companies who are on the floor saying, hey, do you own a restaurant? Can I talk to you? Because they have some new app or some new way to keep the staff in touch with each other. And I think what is most important is not what you choose, but that you as a management team choose it together and agree to be consistent across the board. So I'm sure that there are a lot of great apps out there. What's most important is that you as a management team have some sort of way that you are communicating after every shift. Is there a log that y'all write in? I don't care if it's a notebook or a clipboard that's in the office, or if it's an email that y'all send out, or if you've got some sort of a fancy software that keeps a journal of everything. You have to agree what you're going to use and then actually use it. And the same is true with communicating with your staff. We recommend that you have 2 different ways to communicate with your staff, whether that is a whiteboard in the kitchen, as simple as that, if there's a notebook at the host stand, or if you have a scheduling software where as soon as they clock in, notes pop up. You just have to make sure that everyone knows, hey, this is how we communicate with each other. This is where you can get the information that you need. And we need you to stay on top of that. And that's really, we'll get into this a little bit later as we're talking. Yes. It's super important that people be on board. You can have the best systems in the world. You can have the best apps in the world. If nobody's using them, they're worthless to you.
It wouldn't matter. Yeah, I just love that the tech has really solved some of this part of it, like that just didn't exist years ago, and it's so easy and everyone has access to it. So yeah, if you're looking for solutions, they're out there. Like there's all these neat ways to do it. So yeah, let's kind of go backward. I have sort of a segue there. I was just curious what your thoughts were, but yeah, I do want to talk about that expectations and, setting responsibilities a little bit more, how you do a meeting, what that looks like. And I know you are really passionate about that, Alison.
I am. And I'm sure that Darren's going to have something to say about a weekly managers meeting as well. But absolutely, for me, it's right in line there with communication, not just the structure of how and where are we communicating, but what are our agreements around communication and what are our agreements around the expectations of ourselves as a team. So for me, outside of the more tangible physical systems that Darren is talking about, that's really important that you set up so that everyone understands whose job is whose. If a staff member has a question and, Sally goes to talk to Mike and gets one answer, but Brad goes and talks to Jane and gets another answer. Well, there's just confusion. There's a lack of clarity. There's a lack of consistency. But at the same time, it is so, so important to be having the conversations that you need to be having about what are our standards as a team what are our standards as personal managers? How are we leading by example so that we are modeling to our staff, hey, this is how we do business here. This is how we have agreed to operate as an establishment. Everyone sees that and they know without a doubt that that's how they operate. So that comes a lot from just having really vulnerable, open conversations. One example that I like to use is, there's meeting times. There are people who are raised to think that if you are 15 minutes early, you're on time. And if you're on time, you're late. And then there are the people who are like, I've got my coffee and I roll in 30 seconds before the meeting starts. And then at the meeting time starting, I'm getting out, like I'm putting my coffee down and I'm getting my notebook out. Well, you've got these two people who have very different expectations about starting times and about what it looks like to be on time. And without having those conversations about what does it look like for us, how are we going to agree that we're going to operate, you've got simmering resentments behind the scenes from people who are like, oh my gosh, they're not doing things the way that we should be, because they haven't had conversations about like, well, what is our should be? What are we agreeing is the way that we're going to operate as a team? And it does take time. We say like ways that you can address issues with your leadership team today. There are probably 1,000 little conversations that you can have as a leadership team. Just pick like 2 expectations that you're finding people have different standards for, and just sit down and have a conversation about them. They seem so small, so people often skip over them or put them off, but they are really foundational to a management team that is all pulling in the same direction, on the same page, supporting each other because they're really excited to be working together, and they're not, back and forth being like, well, if Mike would just show up on time for a meeting once in his life, I'm not going to help him out because he doesn't show up on time. He's not helping me out. It really, really works to get everybody on the same page from a leadership style standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we do all have different mindsets about that, especially what you said, the timing, like late, what time I should be there. It's 6 o'clock, but 6:05 is fine. But no, all those differences are real. I have a question for you about like one-on-ones. Like, how often should a manager be getting one-on-one with each staff, and or you can go another level up, the owner with the manager, like, because one-on-one doesn't necessarily, sometimes it doesn't happen enough. People aren't getting feedback. Do you have a guideline for folks in that regard?
Yeah, actually, my recommendation for just building relationship and building those quality connections with staff members is especially for people who operate in the capacity of a manager on duty, but really any member of the management team who is in the building during a shift. My recommendation is that they have a short one-on-one touch point with each staff member who is on that shift every single day. And this is not like, let's sit down and talk about, your life and your job and where you're headed. This is literally just maybe 30 to 60 seconds of like, hey, how are you doing? If you know that somebody's cat was at the vet last week, hey, how's your cat doing? You want to really make sure that you're having those little touchstone moments that let your people know that you care about them, so that they show up knowing that they're coming into a space with a culture that cares, with a culture that wants them to do well at work and be thriving outside of work. People here know me as a human being first, and not just as, a cog in the wheel on the floor. And then once you have that relationship set up, it actually kind of shortens the amount of time that you need to spend on those longer, more formal one-on-ones or team meetings, because you have fewer issues that you're handling, because people show up wanting to work for you because they know that you care about them. So that takes doing more formal check-ins down to for your hourly staff. It could be every 6 months, or it could be once a year, kind of depending on how your your structure is set up and how you think things are going in your restaurant, I do recommend that you sit down and have a conversation about, hey, here's where we see that you could improve. Here's where you're doing well. Here's an assessment of how you are as an employee. What's your assessment of how are we as employers? What do you think we need? What do you need in order to be successful at work? So that should be happening every 6 months to a year. Really similarly with general manager meeting with managers, if you're having that weekly managers meeting, then that's the touchstone for the managers to come together. They're talking out issues, they're solving problems. So you feel like you have to, I got to get in and talk to my GM. I got to sit down and have a one-on-one. Oh my gosh, we've got all these problems. I need to work some things out. Well, if you're handling those every single week during the managers meeting, then you can go down to maybe quarterly. Your owner or your general manager is sitting down with all of the members of the management team to look at, all right, where are we headed? What do you need? How are our projects going? Things like that.
Good. Yeah. Good overview. And I think both parts of those are important. Yeah. Touching folks every day, just like hello, like a lot of times in an environment, restaurant, and retail, and anywhere really, like you can literally get skipped and ignored by your boss for days. And you're like, oh, I guess they don't care. And those small touch points are really important, and they build on each other. So thanks for bringing that up. And then of course there's the formal reviews that you want to do as well, and really set those guidelines. One of the things I wrote down here is asking them, what do you see? What could we do better? Because they have a brain and they have eyes and ears and they see more stuff than you would ever know. So please use that as a resource for your restaurant to get ideas. Oh my God, they're just sitting right there untapped. So please do that. I do want to, I'm going to stay with you, Alison, because I want to talk about the recruiting piece. We talked about people and reviewing them, but we got to get them first. We got to bring them on board. We got to find them and hire them and get them going. How do you talk about that?
Well, since we're talking today about what you can do today to support your management team, specifically looking at your management team, we recommend that first you look at where are your gaps, what are you missing? And that is both in terms of skills and in terms of leadership style. So skills can be a little bit easier, if you don't have anyone who's really a numbers whiz, and that you just need somebody who has experience with restaurant financials and knows how to read a P&L backwards and forwards. Okay, well, that's a gap that you're looking for when you're recruiting. But then you can also look at interpersonal styles. Are you really missing somebody who has really strong emotional intelligence, who can sense from across the room that one of your servers is having a bad day and might need that little extra boost and that extra encouragement or a little bit of support because they're not going to make it through their shift without, having a breakdown in the walk-in. So look for those places that you are missing things on your team. And then that way, when you are recruiting, when you are bringing people in, as you're interviewing what questions to ask in order to identify those skills and those leadership traits that you need to fill in a hole. And then it's just having recruiting systems set up. You need in advance, like Darren was talking about, if you don't have an org chart, if you're not super clear who reports to whom, who's responsible for what, then you need to have all of that set up, because otherwise you're recruiting someone. It's like, well, what's my job going to be? And it's, this position might do a little bit of this, might do a little bit of that. You're not bringing in somebody who is confident that they're coming into an organized business, and you're not going to get your best candidates, because really, really strong candidates don't want to work at a place where it's like, well, if I don't know what I'm going to be doing, then I'm going to go somewhere where they can tell me very specifically, here are the job responsibilities for this role. So to be able to have that all set up in advance, do your research into where do the people of the caliber that we want to hire, where are they hanging out online? Where are they hanging out in the real world? So that as soon as you're ready to hire, you can put that information out, have your job descriptions and your job ads written up ahead of time, so that you're not spending 2 or 3 weeks scrambling to put all of that together, where you're just the hole is just getting worse because you don't have someone that you need on your team. So have all of those structures set up in advance. If you can do that today, so that as soon as you need someone, it's all ready to go and you're recruiting really star employees and you know exactly what you're looking for, that is what is going to fill the hole on your team effectively.
Good. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, I wrote down just that little aspect of a lot of our operators that you work with, that I work with, can be on the smaller side and they wear a lot of hats. But really, there's no excuse for not doing what you just talked about, like identifying the jobs and the roles and having structure. You really can't sit back on we're small and we do everything. Like there's systems, there's SOPs, there's structure you can have in place to be an organized business. So let's keep pushing ahead and talk about that leadership piece, and looking for, role models and leading by example, which you touched on already, more system type stuff. I want to come back to you, Darren, here for a little bit and talk about that stuff. Darren's given talks all over the country to both staff and individually and so forth. So you talk about this all the time, Darren, how to be a leader, what it looks like. What do you think?
Well, it's the structure that you're looking for, something that's in place so that you have a way to manage your restaurant consistently, right? Day after month after year, you have a management team plan in place. That all centers around the weekly manager meeting. And you want a step to make a good step forward in improving your leadership team, call a manager meeting. And we think that it should be done consistently every single week, the same table, the same times. You invite people to this meeting, right? You set up an agreement. Yes, you're going to participate in our weekly leadership meeting. And it's part of the development piece that you're talking about, Jamie, and the lead by example. It's setting the basic structure. So if you go into it with a few simple tasks, right? So step one, set a manager meeting. Now, what I'm going to talk about first is an overlining manager meeting, and then we'd get into a consistent weekly format. That first meeting to kick off, what you're trying to do is get these 5 people on the same page so that we all understand what we're doing. And there's a few basic systems that help you do that. The organization chart is number one. Some basic job descriptions so everybody understands what their role is. Then we get to one of my favorites, which is a responsibilities list. 35 or 40 small, little, simple categories on one spreadsheet that says walk-in cooler, Mike, clean, organize, keep in good repair. So Mike has been assigned to manage the walk-in cooler, and somebody else is managing the uniforms. Somebody else is managing the social media. Somebody has the website, the profit and loss statement. And when 5 people sit around a table and you go top to bottom through a responsibilities list and you divide and conquer, and maybe sometimes the general manager has to take this task, but they know that this is something that they want to eventually turn over to one of their other key people on their leadership team. So it's a document that they can use over time to transition certain areas of responsibility. And when a general manager doesn't have to think about uniforms, doesn't have to think about the walk-in cooler, there's practices and people in place to manage those. It takes that little bit of pressure. And the idea, the whole part of solving your leadership team is to get this part of your business organized so that you can, number one, operate a good restaurant every day, right? You have to have those basics. But then number two is to take on the right projects that can move you forward, a new menu, implementing a new POS system, a new marketing plan. Those are the things that you want to be working on, not hiring staff and training on the daily procedures. So once you have your organization chart and your responsibilities list with your managers, then you want to divide their time, right? You need managers on duty to handle the daily operations, right? Someone is in charge of the shift. And then depending on where they are on the organization chart, maybe they take some time off the floor to work on administrative, ordering, schedules, P&L statements. or maybe they take some time away from managing and they're working a position. So I'm a key employee and 3 days a week I run the shift. The other 2 days a week, I'm a cook. So you're starting to show your core leadership team, these 5 people, where they divide their time. Then my next favorite is a checklist that says, here's what they're going to do, daily tasks on the operations, right? Here's how we open, here's how we close, here's what the managers need to be taking care of every single day. And then on the flip side of that, for all the projects and good systems that you want to implement outside of operations, that's an action list. And it says that here's what priorities we're going to take on. And this is another great piece for what you can do today in this leadership retreat meeting, is identify your priorities. So if you have 5 people that now know what their positions are, know where they're supposed to be, know what they handle each day, then as a group, okay, what priorities do we need to take on? And you decide, well, we have to get the new menu in. That's the top priority. And when 5 people start to then divide up tasks to take on a project like a new menu, it goes a heck of a lot easier and quicker opposed to one person trying to push everything through. And that can be said for 15 different types of projects, right? Whether it's the marketing plan, a service plan to get better, there's separate projects that your leadership team takes on as a group with an action list leading them through. Now, the development and lead by example falls to the owner or the general manager who is first running this leadership retreat and then ultimately running the weekly manager meeting. That's their time during these meetings to spend a little time and train these 5 people on specific areas, to set your expectations, to talk about your culture, to identify your superstars and try to keep moving them forward. So it all falls back to that manager meeting, because that's the 1 hour a week you have to handle the business and not just get overwhelmed by daily operations.
Yeah. So I scribbled down a bunch of notes. That's a really good segment, Darren, walking folks through that. I only thing I could go back to a lot of elements there, but the one thing I want to go back to is the piece you talked about just at the end, kind of investing in their leadership. Really, like you were in essence giving those people the tools. Hopefully they stay with you for a long time, but really you're developing leaders in the industry, which doesn't necessarily happen enough or all the time. But the way you talked about it really does show that development piece. You want to talk about that just for a little bit more? Because I think it's good stuff.
It's a restaurant that I work with in Jacksonville. And I was there one day and the general manager, Paul, says, she's going to be a superstar. And he was referring to a young hostess that he had just hired a few weeks ago and thought that he had identified something truly special. It was just a young professional lady doing a good job. And for the next probably 3 years, he just started to slowly include her. Let me show you how we do the schedule. Let me show you how we do the ordering. Let me show you why we talk about numbers so often. Let me show you a little bit of what goes on in the kitchen. And let me show you the maintenance of the building. And it was just one piece after another, after another, after another. He opens a second restaurant and Olivia's the general manager of the first one 3 years after she hired. And it was just identify your superstars, bring them in, get them involved, get them excited, hand them some responsibilities. And I love doing this in the kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. Your assistant kitchen manager should be always in training development, because unfortunately your kitchen manager or chef is either going to grow with you or exit. And you instantly have somebody in your business that you've been working with. Of course, the assistant manager sits in our weekly manager meeting. He's up to date or she's up to date on everything that we're doing. And it's a natural transition. So find some superstars, spend some time with them and develop them as you grow.
Awesome. Yeah. Listen, first of all, I love it. And I wrote down that phrase, let me show you this. Let me show you that. Like it's slowly bringing them up. I love it. So let's talk about these shows that you folks are doing. Restaurant. We have that logo over there for folks that are watching. If you're listening, we're talking about the Restaurant Management 201. and Restaurant Management 301. You're doing these workshops at events. This is not a casual meeting. This is a nice block of time. Tell me about it, Alison.
Yeah, so each of these workshops, they take place at the California Restaurant Show, the Florida Restaurant Show, and the New York Restaurant Show. And we're going to have Restaurant Management 201 on one day, Restaurant Management 301 the following day. They are both 3.5 hour long workshops, and they are nonstop. I mean, we take, you heard us today, we can talk at length on many, many topics in the restaurant industry. And we really believe that we have distilled for each of them the 10 topics that absolutely have to be handled in order to have successful business operations and successful business growth. And so we've developed 201 and 301. 201 is going to be more for your management teams and your staff where operations just are not solid yet. Every single shift, you feel like you're just trying to get to the end while keeping yourself afloat. Your systems, you know that you need better systems. People are reinventing the wheel all the time. You're constantly just trying to keep your head above water. You don't know when you're going to answer all of your emails because you're out on the floor dealing with things and people aren't picking up the trash on the floor. So if you find yourself in that position where you can't even think about growing the business and moving towards some sort of further success down the road because you're just trying to survive every day, Restaurant Management 201 is going to be the workshop for you and your staff. We break down every single system that you need to have. We put them in order of, hey, you really need to start with your leadership and your management team systems, because if you put a new training system in place, but you have a staff who doesn't listen to and respect your leadership team because you haven't worked on your leadership, no one's going to implement the new system. So you spent all this time for nothing. So that's going to be 201, is really getting day-to-day operations so solid that you have the time and the space and the energy as a management team to start working on those bigger projects that are actually going to be able to move the restaurant or the bar towards whatever future goals you have for it. Now, Restaurant Management 301 is the much more advanced workshop. That's going to be for your ownership teams and your general managers and your higher up management teams of restaurants where daily operations are already solid. You've got that down. Things are going well. And now you're looking at growth. That's really our growth track. Whether that means that you want to open additional venues, if you want to maybe open up a catering arm or a retail arm, or you're looking at retiring one day, you're saying, hey, okay, I've got this really great restaurant, or I have, 3 or 4 great restaurants, and now I need to know what to put in place so that in 7 years I can retire and hand this off to my kids or sell it successfully. Really building value into the business and growing, whatever growing means to you as a business, bringing in a head office so that you are taking some of the administration out of the restaurant itself. That's going to be Restaurant Management 301. So if you really feel like day-to-day operations are handled, they are solid, and you are ready to really take off and grow to the next step, you want to come to Restaurant Management 301.
That's awesome. Like what you just walked through, a lot of times operators don't sit back and do this. So, I mean, imagine being with these two for 3.5 hours, going through these programs. It's an excellent format. And what's great is if you've made the investment, for lack of a better word, to already be at the show, to travel there, because it's investment in your time to get away from your business. But if you're going to be at the show, definitely sit down on one of these events and really dig deep. And I know you guys are just a part of the day for the programming. So you can walk the floor, you can do all that, and you can sit down and really fill your brain with lots of this great stuff. So as we wrap up, I'm going to hit you with a bunch of links here to send folks to, but it's been Darren Denington from Service with Style, along with Alison Anne from Restaurant Revolution. And the shows that they mentioned, they're typically, California is typically in August, and And Orlando is typically in October and November, and then I believe New York is typically in March. So keep your eye out for those dates in a spot near you. I know everything can be found at restaurantmanagement201.com, correct? Yeah, restaurantmanagement201.com will have the next event that's coming up that you can register for. You can also check out the websites for the food shows directly. They do a good job, and it's FloridaRestaurantShow.com, NewYorkRestaurantShow.com, and come on, where is it? CaliforniaRestaurantShow.com. So very easy. Websites look good, have all the information on what's going to be at the shows, as well as the speakers, the events, the special workshops that you guys have. So you can find all that information there. Darren, it can also be found at servicewithstyle.com. Alison, well, I'm looking for your note. Give me the website for you.
Restaurantrevolution.me.
Yes. Not .com, .me. So yeah, I have that there. So you can find those guys on there. They're on social as well. So lots of good stuff. For more from us at runningrestaurants.com, visit the website. We have marketing tips, tools, people tips as well. Subscribe to the podcast if you're not currently do that. And if you could do a favor and just like wherever you are, if you're listening to this, hit that like button, please, or the subscribe button. Take 2 seconds and review or rate the episode. All that stuff is super, super helpful, and we appreciate it. All right, folks, till next time, we'll see you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.